So let's conclude my Scream franchise review with Scream 4. And also, I have not seen the show, and if I do ever watch the show, I will review it, but I have not seen the show as of now. I think I watched the first episode and thought it was alright, but I never finished it. So the show is not going to be in my rankings. I'll do a ranking video of the first 4 Scream movies after this review, but so the Scream TV series is not in this, if you're wondering. This is why the last thing I'm talking about is Scream 4, not the show. Now, Scream 4 is an interesting movie. Again, like Scream 3, it's a love it or hate it one. But for me personally, I think that Scream 4, for me, has more positives than 3. Like, 3, I love Sidney L. Roman. I loved the reveal, the idea, but I thought the rest was not that very interesting. In Scream 4, I thought the movie as a whole was more interesting and more fascinating and more, like, these characters were more likable and interesting to me. I liked how even though a lot of them are repeats of the first one, because this is using the remake trend, using characters that basically are remade, or are copies of the first movie, but I like the fact that these characters, some actors on their own in this movie, hold their own and feel different than the original, even though they're trying to be copies of the original on purpose, because this is following the reboot trend. And this is 10 years after Scream 3, so this is where the Scream franchise has been dormant for 10 years. So we've had so many horror movies since 2000 and 2011. Like, there's so many, and I love how they immediately reference a lot of them, because, like, there's so many, like, differences whenever, like, you're watching the third one to the fourth one because of the time period they're in. And this one is way more violent than the third one because the third one was during the Columbine murders, so it unfortunately was trimmed and because of those unfortunate events, but this one is way more gorier and way more, like, one of the most brutal ones, honestly, out of all of them, surprisingly. Like, the brutality in this is really good, really scary. But the main thing is, 10 years later, Sidney Prescott comes back to Woodsboro, writing her own book. Then the Ghostface murders happen again. But she wonders how this could happen again, because it was resolved in the third film, like, the killer who started it all is dead, and this film is not the same person. So it's like, who would be the killers in this one? This has got a bigger mystery to it, I think, now, because it's like, who else, like, literally, who else could it be, like, that isn't Roman? Because he's the one who started the whole thing in the first 3 movies. So we get this interesting, like, meta opening where it's 3 different openings in one, which is kind of odd. Like, I mean, I don't mind it, but it's weird. It starts out with these 2 girls. Lucy Hale is one of them, and they're talking about, they're like, let's watch Saw 4, and the other girl's like, oh, it's so bloody and gross, I don't like it. And then, of course, Ghostface comes in and kills them. Then it shows the Stab 6 title, and then it shows Anna Paquin and Kristen Bell watching Stab 6, and then Anna Paquin is just complaining, like, these movies are just so cliched and so stupid, and they've been done to death, and then, like, there's no surprises, and then Anna Paquin stabs her in the stomach and says, shut the fuck up and watch the movie. And I thought that was really funny, honestly, because Anna Paquin just kept this straight face and, like, was really creepy. Like, I enjoyed her in this cameo in the opening of the movie, and Anna Paquin too. But then it does another thing where it's a Stab 7, and then it's in the real life part of the movie, like in the real movie, where Jenny and Marnie, these are the 2 main characters in this one who die at the beginning. And honestly, it's kind of weird because in Scream 1 and 2 and 3, the people who get killed in the beginning of each of those 3 movies were important actors, like, were famous or becoming famous at that time, like Drew Barrymore, Jada Pinkett Smith, Liev Schreiber was already big. So then we get these 2 actors who are fine, but it's just interesting that they're not anybody in particular that are, like, big. Like, if it was like Anna Paquin and Kristen Bell as the actual, like, people who die in this movie, then that would have been an interesting, like, show big famous characters. But yeah, the beginning is not too bad, where, like, the Marnie and Jenny girls die, and God, Jenny's was brutal, like, her death, whenever she gets stabbed, falls down the freaking garage room, and, like, the garage, like, gets shut on her, and then she's crying and just freaking out, and then Ghostface comes and gets her, but like that's a well acted scene. Like that girl is really good. Like I really liked her performance in the beginning of this movie, and I liked how this movie immediately gave us the clue that you can't like you can use the Ghostface voice on an app, so literally anybody could use it, and that gives away an easy no suspect like range. Like anybody could use it, so there's no suspects in that regard. But yeah, then it starts out with the actual story after the main two kills, like the other movies, and we get introduced to Sydney again, which I will talk to about her like as the movie goes along, and Gale and Dewey as well. But the new characters, we get Jill, Kirby, Olivia, Trevor, Charlie, Robbie, and Hicks, and also Anthony Anderson and Adam Brody as these two cops, and Allison Brie as like the reporter, or not the reporter, the publicist. And these characters, like specifically Jill, Kirby, Olivia, Trevor, Charlie, and Robbie, are like the first movie, but I thought that some of them really do feel different than the first one in terms of their performances. Like Hayden Panettiere's Kirby, like she is fantastic in this movie. Beautiful as well too, like just incredible in this movie, and I love her so much in this. And she's honestly, I think, my favorite character in this whole movie. Like she is so damn good. She's got such a sexy appeal to her, but she's got such a smooth way of acting. Like she's just a great actress as well, and I love her in this. And I think that she just really sells it in this movie as this awesome character, like this memorable as hell character. And I really thought she was different as opposed to like somebody in the first movie, like where they're repeating these characters. Jill, up until the ending, is just like Sydney, where she has a boyfriend and then they break up. Then it's implied that he could be the killer, but it's not, because Jill's the killer. And then like Olivia is just killed off quick. And Trevor is kind of the red herring to like being the killer, but he's not. And then Charlie and Robbie are like the basically two versions of Randy. Like they're just like, or I guess, well, you can't say they're Billy and Stu because Billy would be Trevor. So they're like two different versions of Randy, like Charlie and Trevor. I mean Charlie and Robbie. But those characters are totally fine. They're just not as interesting as the first one, but they're still good. Besides Kirby, who is fantastic, and Jill's really good in the reveal. Like as the reveal, I'll talk about the reveal later, but the reveal with her, she is awesome in the reveal. Like she's fine in the whole movie until then, but she's fantastic at the reveal of the movie. And God, whenever we get to Olivia's death in this movie, that's brutal. Like that really showed me that like this is not playing around with the violence. Like they're gonna show so much, and they did. Really scary, really brutal. And then I love whenever Sydney gets the call from the killer on her phone, Olivia's phone, answers it, and then Ghostface has a conversation with her about leaving her family behind, leaving the town behind, which implies who the killer is. And I love the fact that his final line in that call was like, I'm gonna keep you alive until I want you dead. Like until then, you're gonna suffer. And like that's just insane. Like this version of Ghostface is ruthless, just like the other ones, and I love how ruthless he is in this one. And then there's a great scene after Olivia's killed where Sydney and Jill are talking, and Sydney shows how great of an actress Neve Campbell is, but the line where she says, "You know how people always tell you, I know how you feel, but they really have no freaking idea how you actually feel? Well, I know how you feel." And that was just a great line from Neve Campbell, and that scene with her and Jill is great. Because this is the fourth time that Sydney has had this shit happen. Like, she truly knows that, like, this is, like, and to have her cousin, Jill, be part of this, or at least she thinks she's a part of this, like, being killed off, is sad and haunting. And, like, the performance from Neve Campbell is awesome in this movie, like the other ones, and I love her in this one, too. And then the second hint of Jill appears after the first hint, which at the beginning of the movie, after Ginny and Marnie are killed, whenever all the kids are in the classroom, everybody gets a call except for Jill, and Jill doesn't even respond until they say, "Oh, they're dead," and then Jill's like, "What?" Like, that's the first implication that she's the killer. And then the second implication with the scene with Sydney and Jill, where she's saying, "I know how you feel." Jill says to Sydney, like, how do you deal with that? Like, how do you deal with all those people always wanting to know where you are, know what you're doing? Like, I couldn't handle that. And it's obviously because she wants that. Jill, the character, wants that so much, but it makes it believable that she isn't the killer. Like, it's a good twist whenever you realize she is, because that scene, like, watching it after you know she's the killer, it's a good, like, way to back away from implying she is. And then we get to this good scene with Gail, who fights Ghostface at that Stabathon thing, and like I like how she's the one who realizes that the killer is recording the murders and making their own movie, and that to me is another cool idea from this franchise, because the first one, these killers are literally killing off these people like to make a movie, and then the second one they're making a sequel, and the third one they're killing them off like in the movie, and in this one they are literally making the movie with cameras, like recording murders. Like, that is scary. I like how they do different ideas in every one of these, even though it's the same kind of thing. People get slashed, but it's just like, I like how they do different story things. But then we get to the ending, basically, where it's scenes at Kirby's house, where of course Charlie gets killed, and then you realize the hints of what has happened. Like, you realize that a great scene where Sydney appears and Ghostface tries to kill her and Kirby and Jill. Jill hides upstairs. Her and Kirby go downstairs, Sydney and Kirby. This awesome, great acted scene where Charlie is outside, out looking through the door, like, let me in, there's somebody out here. And Sydney's like, don't let him in if you don't believe him. Like, you don't know if you can trust him. And this scene is so well acted with Hayden Panettiere, where Charlie's like, let me in, please, like, I'm gonna die out here. And she's like, back away from the door, Charlie. And he's like, why won't you do it? And she's like, I'm sorry, I can't. Like, it's such a great acted line and a great scene of her losing it. Like, because she can't let him in. It's like, he could be the killer. And he is, but he could be the killer in her mind. And, of course, the killer calls her, and she says all the remakes, because this is about reboots. And, she thinks she wins. She goes outside and Charlie stabs her, and it's just like, I think that was kind of a reveal that I thought wasn't that great. But in retrospect, it works, because then it's to the Kirby moment, and whenever you reveal Jill, it's like she's the second one. But I just thought it was kind of a quick reveal with Charlie, because he gets up and he's like, Kirby, this is making a move, and he just stabs her. And I love the fact that Kirby, by the end, the last shot of the movie, you see her, and she's stabbed twice, but she's sitting there, leaking blood, but she's sitting there, like, moving around, so she is alive. And Wes Craven, in the commentary for this that I've heard before, when he was alive, he said that, I'm not saying, like, his line was in the commentary for this, like, I'm not saying she's coming back, but you didn't see her die. So, even though Wes Craven's gone, if they ever make any more Scream movies, I would love to see her back, because she's so awesome in this movie. She was such a fantastic presence. And she didn't die, according to Wes Craven, even though he's being discreet about it, but obviously he was saying she didn't die. And then, whenever Sydney gets, like, knifed to the throat by Charlie, like, realize who the other killer is, and it's Jill, and she stabs Sydney straight up. No other killer did that immediately to Sydney. And then they reveal the whole plan, and I love that even though they did this a couple different times already, Jill immediately kills Charlie and is like, the public wants a sole survivor, baby, and she just kills him. And I'm like, that is horrible. And oh my god, whenever Jill kills Trevor, shoots him in the balls and then shoots him in the head, that is brutal. And then Emma Roberts and her reveal is fantastic. She is legitimately scary in this movie. In the ending, like, she scares me. Like this, the way it's written, the way she acts, this is terrifying. This, honestly, out of all of these killers in any of these movies, I think she is the scariest, because, and she's the smallest person. She's like 5 foot tall. She's like the smallest person out of all the killers. But she is the scariest to me, because if you look at Scream 1, 2, and 3, Scream 1, Billy Loomis, I mean, Stu Macher's there, but he's the accomplice killer. Billy Loomis did it for revenge, for Sydney's mother having sex with her father and leaving his family. And then in Scream 2, Mrs. Loomis, I mean, Billy again is the accomplice like Stu, but Mrs. Loomis killed because of revenge on Sydney for killing her son. And then Scream 3, Roman tried to kill Sydney because of revenge on Maureen disowning him, not wanting him. So all three of those killers, main killers in the first three, are doing it on revenge, and I love them too. But in this one, I think Jill is the scariest because she is just a brat, like a literal brat from this generation that wants to be famous. So she goes to extreme length, literally killing people, her family, her mother, to just become famous, and that is, I think, the most terrifying thing out of any of these villains in these movies. That is terrifying. And the line she says, like she says, one thing she says is like, I've told so many lies today. I've started to believe them. Like the way she says these lines are scary. Like she's insane. And then she's like, you know what it was like growing up in this family? All I heard was Sydney this and Sydney that and Sydney, Sydney, Sydney. Everybody thought you were so fucking special. And then she's like, you got your 15 minutes now. I want mine. And I don't feel sympathy for this character at all. I just think she is a nutcase who is scary as hell. And that's why I think she's the scariest villain, because the other ones are doing it on revenge for Sydney or her mother. In this one, it is this character who is not connected to Roman or any of the killings from the first three. She is just doing this because she is a spoiled millennial brat who is trying to get famous by literally murdering people just to become the survivor, to kill them off, to become famous. That is terrifying. And I don't feel sympathy for him because, like I said, she is a brat that is just wanting to be famous. Like, I hate that. And that makes me more angry in this movie than the other ones. Like, the other ones wanted revenge for, like, family members, but, like, this character just does it because she's a spoiled brat. Like, I hate that. And then the scene, after she stabs Sydney twice, everybody else in the house is killed, so Jill, like, damages herself in a way where it looks like Trevor killed her. Trevor and Charlie. She literally stabs herself in the chest. Throws herself on, like, a table. It's scary, terrifying. And then, of course, Dewey and the police and Hicks and all of them get there. But it looks, of course, like she planned. And then they all go to the hospital. And I love the fact, like, this hospital scene is interesting. I think it's fine. I don't like it as much as the scenes in Kirby's house with Jill and stuff. I thought if it ended there, it would have been fine. But they even said in this movie, like, it's trying to be an alternate ending, quote unquote, because, like, they go to the hospital, which is the last place in the movie instead of the party, like the first one, because they're rebooting it. Whenever Dewey goes up to Jill and she's like, yeah, I'm gonna write a book with Gail, with our matching wounds and all. And I don't get why she gave that hint away, because that immediately gave Dewey and Gail the implication that she's the killer. But I liked how that happened, because I think she was doped up. I think that's why she was drugged out, because she was in the hospital getting meds. So she didn't even think about what she said. Jill just said, like, matching wounds, and whenever Dewey goes up to Gail, she's like, how did she know that I got stabbed in the shoulder too? And then they completely figure it out. And then there's this scene where Jill goes in and Sydney is unconscious because she was stabbed twice, and then Jill wakes her up and starts choking her, and she's like, fucking die already, and it is scary. Like, again, Emma Roberts is really terrifying in this, and I did not expect her to be this terrifying. And she just starts choking her, and then Dewey comes in, Gail comes in, Hicks comes in, and they have a standoff. And eventually they get the one up on her, and Jill gets killed by Sydney. And I really love this line, which completely gives everything about the Sydney character, is that whenever Jill dies, she falls next to her, and then Sydney just looks into her dead face and says, I don't know about you, but I feel a lot better now. And then Sydney just puts her head back and relaxes, like she is just done with another set of killings. And the thing that makes this movie scary at the very end is that after Jill gets killed, it's too late. The everybody knows that, they think that Jill is the survivor, and all these lines while showing Jill's dead body just sitting in her face like blank. You hear audio where like people are saying on the news like Jill Roberts, an American hero, right out of the movies. Like she's the sole survivor. She's the hero. That's scary, and that's scary how it ended because this, like Jill got what she wanted even though she died, but she got what she wanted. She became the survivor, but then she died after that. So since we don't have a sequel to this, and I don't know if we ever will, unless somebody else does it because Wes Craven passed, I wonder what would happen after this movie. Like, Sidney, Gale, and Dewey and Hicks, I guess, could explain this, but it's all over the news now that Jill was the survivor, so I don't know what happened, so I really don't. But rewatching Scream 4, I really did dig the hell out of this again. I thought that I like it more than 3. There's still some things I don't like about it. Like the characters are not all that interesting. They're not like the first one. They're copies of the first one on purpose because this is a reboot, even though it's a sequel. But they do the reboot trend, so these characters aren't as interesting all the time, except for Kirby, who is just fantastic. And it's like Sydney, Dewey, and Gale are great, but it's just, I don't know, like it's not as good as the first two, but it's still better than 3 in my opinion, even though I like things a lot from 3. But I feel like the negatives outweigh the positives in 3 for me, but this one, the positives outweigh the negatives. But it's not like 1 and 2 where I think they're both fantastic. This one is good. It's a good sequel. So Scream 3, but I like this one more. So this is one that I really did enjoy rewatching because, again, it had a terrific villain, like the scariest villain I think in all of them. Like she's this 5 foot tall girl. Like that's what's scary about her. And I love the fact that what her motive is terrifying. But I love how she's a brat. Like that's why I don't give any sympathy for him at all. I give sympathy for all the other killers because they lost family members. They lost everybody because of Sydney or her mother. But this character is just doing it because she's a brat, and I love that. So overall, I really loved a lot of this movie, and like I said, I don't think it's as great as 1 and 2, but I think it's a really solid sequel. So this ends my Scream franchise, but not before I talk about the ranking. So I'll do a Scream ranking video soon after this. So thanks guys for watching my Scream reviews. Check out my ranking of 1 through 4 whenever I make it. Thank you.